afternoon and good evening to everyone wherever you may be tuning in today's episode from around the globe. We are back here on home soil, but all the way from the US of A, from Jacksonville, Florida, and an individual who truly embodies what it means to lead with purpose, innovate with heart, and serve with integrity. He's the owner, founder, and driving force behind All About Events. First starting his journey in the event rental industry in Jacksonville in 2004, starting in a modest 10 by 10 storage unit, which has since grown into a 32,000 square foot powerhouse and team of 45 expert rental professionals, possessing visionary leadership rooted in local action and scaling through service excellence. Described as a leader who puts people first, from clients to employees and industry peers alike. His passion for customer service, event excellence, and attention to detail has helped All About Events rack up some pretty impressive accolades, from consecutive Wedding Wire Couples Choice Awards and various Premier Bride Awards. But his impact doesn't stop there. He is the current board chairman of the American Rental Association, where his leadership has helped shape national initiatives, guided major decisions, influenced generational programs, assisted in navigating complex governance updates, and is always keeping spirits high around the campfire on committee retreats. Possessing the ability of calm composure, humour, and genuine care for others. Being described as highly committed with prevailing integrity, and even said by the ARA CEO Tony Conant that when things get stressful, I always look to channel my inner Jeff. So without further ado, ARA Chair, Event Industry Advocate and Founder, Mr. Jeff Crotto.
Michael, thanks for having me. I've become a fan of your podcast, and your introduction was the highlight of my trip. I couldn't wait to hear it, so it's good to be here.
Well, you've only just got here, and I'm sure you've got a lot to experience in Australia, so hopefully it's not the only highlight with a long journey to come. But Jeff, firstly, welcome to Australia, pretty fresh off the plane and probably still battling some jet lag, and I'm sure you're excited to see some fun contrasts over the coming days between Australia and the US rental market. And we might have to grab you maybe at the end of the week and ask you what surprised you most about these differences. But I guess firstly, let's start with your involvement for attending and having the chance to experience a HRA Hire show and your journey with the ARA over the pond.
Sure. So my belief is that rental people, my interactions with people from Australia over the last, few years in the association, rental people are the same around the globe. So I'm sure that everyone's going to be super hospitable, but very much looking forward to it. The differences and the similarities, it's really an honor to be here to represent ARA and spend time with the great folks of Australia.
Absolutely. Jeff, before we dive in, and let's, I guess no pun intended, but set the stage, and what's an event rental item that you secretly think is ridiculous but clients seem to oddly love, and the strangest request that you've maybe had for an event?
The strangest request I've ever had, years ago, we were dealing with a client and she had difficulty with the placement of the tent and where the legs were going to be, etc. And she said, do you have a tent with no legs? And I just looked at her and I said, what do you mean? And she said, just the legs are all in the way. Is there a tent with no legs? And she was totally serious. So that's probably the oddest request I've ever had. I don't know. We do a ton of weddings, and we sort of see the same items over and over again, if you will. So it's just it's a unique, very unique business, and we embrace it and love it, for what it is.
For sure. I think Bluetooth legs definitely takes the cake for the most odd request, that's for sure. But Jeff, looking back on the rental company that you worked for prior to starting All About Events, you described it as a small mum and pop operation, but its small size allowed you to see almost everything, from delivering equipment, installing tents, washing dishes, cleaning equipment in the warehouse, to sales and being on site with clients. Accumulating knowledge from this kind of, I guess you would call, try-all environment gave you the confidence to go out on your own, giving you the confidence to sell yourself, your services, and an ability to gaining clients, and saying that I could not have survived this long without those lessons. Jeff, I guess if we rewind the clock 15 years ago, it's 2010, the beginning, truly starting small to, I guess, growing big from humble beginnings and an immense vision, like I said, from a 10 by 10 storage unit to where you are today. Can you take me back to day one, the ideation behind All About Events, and what really gave you the push to go out on your own?
I just believe, my entire background was waiting on people, training people to wait on people, selling to, dealing with the public and taking care of people. I mean, I consider myself a customer service wizard, and I just felt it could be done better. It was done through the prism of the rental store versus done through the prism of the customer. And I literally just thought it could be done better. I thought you could take care of your internal customers, your team members better, and definitely take care of external customers better. And that's really what did it. And I say all the time, it was much easier to get work than I ever thought it would be, but it was much harder to manage. It's been much harder to manage it than I ever thought it would be. Just the decisions in terms of what you buy and don't buy, what you the people management obviously is difficult. But I would not be here without the lessons I learned in that business, because it gave me the ability to do everything, make management decisions, make ownership even decisions, and then just the experience of equipment all the way, every part of it. And we even had a small segment of equipment, actual equipment in the business. So even that side, obviously I don't take advantage of that today, but it just all the way around has made me more well-rounded today.
For sure, Jeff, you've truly scaled smart and with a customer-centric approach to growth, and going from a half shipping container storage unit to this warehouse space and over 45 employees. That doesn't just happen overnight. And also having grown through adversity. You explained that 2020 was shaping up to be your best year ever, and then the pandemic hit hard. A 40% drop in revenue, yet by 2022 you were back on track stronger than ever. Very much relating to Mike Tyson's famous statement of everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Jeff, over the past 15 years, I'm sure like all business operators, you've experienced periods of doubt, thinking maybe it wasn't going to work, moments where you had to pause or reassess and pivot the business to continue growing steadily. What have been some of the biggest growing pains and challenges you've experienced during your expansion, and the mindset shifts that you really needed to help steady the shift through these turbulent times?
I mean, I think that, it's constantly a struggle in terms of buying equipment. I mean, it's so capital intensive, and I started it being somewhat risk averse in terms of debt and things like that, but I feel like you have to have it to do what you want to do and to scale. And we've sort of reached a point in the business where the growth is not even for me anymore. It's more to provide opportunities for the people that work there. I have people who started as, installers that are now managers of shifts and things like that. And that's all, really cool to see. It's definitely, it's fun being the leader, but it certainly is challenging at times like COVID, when you have to, lay off your whole staff and close for a period of time. But it definitely made us better. It gave us all a reset, because I think we all thought, I say all the time, trees don't grow to the sky. And I think it was good for us to sort of get a reset of like, this isn't a fairy tale. We've got to keep working to be better. So I think it was good for us, but it was definitely dark days for sure.
Jeff, in a TED Talk that I recently watched called How to Turn Setbacks into Success, highlights the importance that setbacks have, like you described, as an opportunity for a strategic pivot point and the best growth philosophy for leaders. Introducing a compelling reframe that setbacks aren't interruptions, that they're inflection points for reinvention. Arguing that nearly all successful leaders that they've interviewed attribute their greatest achievements to lessons they've learnt during the most significant periods of setbacks. That the idea challenges leaders to embrace these moments as creative pressure cookers that spark innovation. Jeff, I guess watching that video had me thinking how it, perfectly echoes this observation that the strongest of species is not that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most adaptable to change. I guess from that perspective, similarly to in business as in nature, and survival and long-term success don't always favour these resistant disruptions, but those who respond with adaptability, creativity, or maybe reinvention, like yourselves. I think this really does parallel this, powerful mindset that you guys displayed during COVID. This could have easily marked maybe a beginning to the end, but instead became something very transformative for yourself, like you just mentioned. What's something that I guess you really used as a launch pad after this period to continue the success?
Well, I mean, I think when I started, failure was not an option, and I've sort of always taken that. I've always taken that approach, but really the only two times, now maybe three times with the fire we had last year, but the only two times failure was ever an option was in the very beginning, because once we started going, it was sort of a runaway freight train, and then COVID was reset the same way, and you just put our head down and went to work, and I think we're very adaptable in general. I mean, being in the wedding business, brides are, constantly changing their mind. Things are constantly, coming up that you didn't plan for or whatever. So we're very good at being adaptable in that way anyway. So I think that all, built us to be successful, during that, what was really a rough time for our whole industry.
For sure. Jeff, let's talk about your showroom. 4,000 square meters of space dedicated to immersive event planning. The showroom at All About Events is not just a space to browse for rental products, it's an experience. Making major investments in this space has truly changed the game and exponentially enhanced your client engagement. I guess with that in mind, who is All About Events in 2025 and your main focus areas, products and customer base that you're really providing for?
Yeah, so we do about 55% of our business is weddings, and then the remaining portion is a hodgepodge of everything else you can think of, community events, tons of corporate, colleges, things like that. But I mean, we are a full service rental company. We rent everything, from tents all the way down to forks and knives and spoons and everything in between. We have it's a ridiculous selection of products, in my opinion. I mean, the number of, 20 plus styles of chairs and China patterns and things like that is just crazy to me. But it's what we do. And every year we go to the show and we buy more. And, it's just I think what we just talked about. It's very adaptive. We've gotten good at we tell our customers yes and then figure out, how to do it. We've gotten better at charging for it appropriately. We didn't always do that. But I mean, we're just a very, the customer, I say to people all the time in orientation, if somebody says sir to me, like they'll say, thank you, sir, yes, sir, whatever. I tell people all the time, don't say sir to me, say it to our clients, because that's who pays the bills. It's not me. All I do is hold the money until Friday and then I give it to you. So it's the customers who makes the whole place go. Their business, their orders, their loyalty, et cetera, is what makes us go.
When you first moved into your proper warehouse space many years ago, what was going through your mind? Was it excitement, terror, fear, all of the above? I remember when we first moved into even our current location, my parents were flooded with all of these emotions, maybe a strange combination of excitement and terror.
No, it's funny, the very first space I moved into back in the spring of 2011, well, the first, space I could see customers, I quit my job in the morning and signed a lease on the space in the afternoon. And I will never forget, I was handing the deposit check and my hand was it was like $725, right? It was no money, but my hand was literally shaking as I was handing him the check because it was scary. Like I'm going from quitting my job and I'm signing up to pay rent on a space that was, significantly more than the storage units I was renting at that point. Just let's figure it out. But the day I quit my job, it was instantaneously. I was more accessible. I was able to be more responsive to customers, and the revenue, I mean, it literally was a straight line and immediately took off from there. And it's, basically hasn't slowed down other than COVID to this day.
Jeff, continuing on this customer-centric approach to growth, I'm sure a key contributor to this is All About Events' amazing drive of service excellence from your expert team members and amazing culture, building personal relationships, bringing fresh perspectives, active collaboration, employee ownership in the decision-making process, I'm sure, and the importance of developing talent within, all contributing to this really, at the end of the day, like you said, that sir to the client satisfaction being unforgettable with your events. Jeff, culture is one of those, I guess, invisible forces that can really make or break a company, especially in service-driven industries that we're in. You've said that customer service is your top priority and that clients won't find it anywhere else apart from all of our events, that your team lives and breathes that mindset across hundreds of events a year. And I recently saw a LinkedIn post from one of your new business development specialists at All About Events, Olivia, sharing her excitement to contribute to this company's growth, looking to build lasting partnerships, having a focus on ensuring clients have unforgettable experiences. How does All About Events and really stand out in the Florida market for this service excellence? And I guess, have there been some standout success stories that you've heard from clients?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is in our society, service is much worse than it used to be, so to speak. So I think it's easier to stand out. That's the good news. But I think we do a good job regardless. I mean, I think we stood out before. That's is the way it is now. But no, I mean, I think it permeates everything we do. We try to be super responsive with customers in terms of, they never get a voicemail. They always get a live person that answers the phone. It's not an automated system. We get them a quote as quick as we can. Usually, the rule is the same day, but most of the time it's within, hours or minutes or whatever, depending on the complexity of the order. And it's just from there, try to take that same thing all the way through, communicate when their delivery is coming, call them when they're on the way, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it just, when we've gone back to customers and asked them why they rent from us, people who rent from us on a regular basis, it's the service and the responsiveness is why they rent from us. So what we're doing right. We certainly don't do everything right by any stretch of the imagination because it's a difficult business, but we own it. If we make a mistake, we own it. We fix it, whether that's throw resources at it to fix it, or if it's a problem after the fact, refunding money if that's what needs to be done. But just try to be very over deliver service wise for what they're accustomed to.
So how do you, I guess, lack of a better term, but audit or develop this culture and ensure that your team environment stays positive and healthy? And you mentioned before, like a behind the scenes moment when you weren't actually in the office, but something went wrong and you might have had a bit of a I told you so moment. Yeah. But I guess it kind of does form this failure to win story, and that really does strengthen your internal talent development and all the individuals within your operation. So how do you really continue to make sure that the good fish stay and some bad ones don't get in?
I mean, it's difficult. We made a concerted effort 2 years ago to really, we felt like the people who were staying to some degree in spite of ourselves. Like they liked the work and they liked working there, they liked the environment, but we weren't doing anything to help them succeed. So 2 years ago, we made a concerted effort how we hire people, how we orient them, how we onboard them, how we offboard them, all of those things. And it's made a dramatic change in turnover and in the buying in of people. And the other side of it is just not tolerating any, bad apples, if you will. There's another word I want to use, but I won't use it. So we have a 0 bad apple policy. So if you are in that category, we get rid of you. It just doesn't work because you'll make everybody around you miserable and not want to work. So when people like Olivia come to work with us, Olivia's new with us. She's awesome, and somebody that is a really good find for us. But she feels very comfortable coming into the culture. She already knew some of us already, but she feels very comfortable coming in because of the culture we've created. And it makes me feel good to have somebody, as qualified as her and as accomplished as she is in the industry, come to work for us and go, stand on the mountaintop and talk about our services versus someone else's.
Jeff, events in Florida are a very unique operating region, and I guess you've got beautiful weather all year round, but it doesn't always cooperate with huge unpredictability. Looking at your tent rental line, utilizing the industry's highest quality tents to ensure that clients are not only protected, but their events look amazing and stand out in the process. Always looking to make each and every aspect of your events perfect and supplying a client's day that they can only dream of when looking back. Jeff, in my research and looking at the advancing popularity of the Florida event market has really influenced the growth of US-based event rental stores and is a significant contributor to the state's economy, with the market size being $2.5 billion and engaging 7,500 Florida businesses. How do you handle the seasonal demand, the fluctuations, the tourism, and what are some unique challenges that you experience operating in Florida?
I think the biggest unique challenge we have is the hurricanes and what comes with that. The advantage of it is you obviously have days of notice. You know a week before that there's one forming in the Atlantic or forming in the Gulf. The advantage from Jacksonville's perspective is we're on the other side of most hits. Most hits are not. Jacksonville hasn't a direct hit in 60 years, basically. So we don't get the direct hit. We get the aftermath, if you will, once it comes across the state. But it definitely is tough because if the bride or the person, particularly a bride, if they can have the event, they want to have the event, and they don't really care that our equipment's at risk, so to speak. Or we have to have, even if you can have the wedding on Saturday, we don't have time to get it down safely before the hurricane comes. So what typically happens is most of the time is the schedule, at the end of the day, we both get on the same page. And that is their clients aren't going to fly into Florida when there's hurricane, or their guests rather aren't going to fly into Florida when there's a hurricane coming. So they don't want to have it anyway. And we want to take the stuff down or never put it up. So we end up being in a good place. But there's definitely times where it's tough, whether the storm is coming like on a Friday, for example. So Saturday's going to be nice. They want to move forward, but we don't have time to set everything up. Or on the other side of the spectrum, if storms coming in Sunday. So it definitely creates, and it's being a recent groom myself, I know how stressful that week is. If in a case like that, it definitely makes everybody's already on pins and needles. So it just makes it that much more stressful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jeff, looking to the ARA, firstly, congratulations on stepping in as not only president in 2024, but your current role now as chairman, and an amazing achievement after many years of dedication. But I guess now let's start at looking to the beginning of your ARA journey. Your ARA resume is beyond impressive, sitting as Regional 3 Director, Executive Committee member, working with task forces, advocacy groups, and most recently as President. Prior to today's episode, I reached out to CEO of the ARA, Tony Connett, and asked from his perspective on your contribution to the National Association during your tenure. Tony said that Jeff is one of our youngest presidents, and in his role has been a role model for folks to get involved in our association early. He has great rapport with members from all demographic backgrounds, given his easygoing and approachable manner. Jeff, you mentioned that in the material handlings wholesaler, that since transitioning to the board chair position and serving as president has been an amazing experience, and saying that I can't wait to see where the industry continues to go in the future. Jeff, what pulled you towards your initial involvement, sparked this initial interest, and really has kept you going with the ARA for so long?
It's funny. I was talking to one of the old presidents, Ted Cook, in Las Vegas, and I remember the first leadership conference I went to. I was a member, a general board member of the area of Florida. Went to leadership conference, and these three guys up on the dais that are the officers I didn't know. And you think to yourself, like, wow, what those guys do to get up there, like president of the ARA, like, wow, that's, and you never think in your wildest dreams that 10 years later, you're going to be the guy up there, the old guy up there. The other people are down here saying, who is that guy? How did he get there? So I just think, I say this all the time, I just said yes. Every opportunity, I joined the Area Florida Board. On the very first call, they needed a secretary. I said yes. And then, a few years later, Peggy DeFrancisco was becoming president. She asked me to be her vice president. I was like, I don't know how to do that. Like, I don't know what's involved. But I said yes. And then when my opportunity came to be president, and then when Region 3 nomination came up, I just kept saying yes. And it's completely changed my life. It's changed the business. It's changed my life. It's changed our staff. I mean, the staff goes to show and has access to people they would never have access to. People, on our side of the industry, the event side, people like John Bibbo and Dan Hooks, who are friends of mine, but my staff would never have access to those people. But because of my relationship with them, which is because of ARA, my staff has had access to those people and be able to pick their brains. I have a staff member whose role was modeled after Dan Hooks' sister's role because I knew what she did and sort of described it. So things like that just completely changed our business, and that we would have no ability to that if not for the great people of ARA just in general and the giving of it, but just being so involved has completely changed it for us.
Jeff, Tony also mentioned some of his favourite Jeff memories, some funny stories, highlights from ARA member visits, and how your collaboration on various trips together around the nation has truly fostered an amazing relationship, and how this has now developed into a long-term friendship for the future. Tony said that it is impossible to keep a straight face around Jeff. He's always having a witty comment or a funny story to tell. We go on a mini retreat each fall with the executive committee, and the goal is always to do with team building within the group. This can involve late nights by the fire, karaoke, train rides, and all of which lead to big laughs.
Yeah.
It is not appropriate to go into much more detail, but let's just say the next morning always involves a welfare check on Jeff. Jeff has become a good friend, a trusted advisor, and has a great outlook on life, and always maintains his composure when others might get riled up. I've learned to channel my inner Jeff when I get frustrated, and it helps me see the bigger picture. Mate, you've worn many hats at the ARA, from Florida state level to now this national level with committees. Talking about this environment of this advice, education, and the expansion of your knowledge on the rental industry, I think really has directly influenced the growth of All About events. How has this really assisted you in navigating issues in your operation?
Oh, I think it's everything. I mean, I think the education, the ARA puts out is unbelievable. Things at the show, even Rental U and places like that. The bit we talked earlier about the business I worked for, the mom and pop before I started All About Events. They're ARA members and never did anything related to ARA. They would go, when it was in Orlando, they would go to the show maybe, just walk the show floor, and that was it. But not involved area of Florida, not involved nationally, not involved in any other way. And, we're 5 times their size at this point. And the ARA is a significant portion of that reason. I mean, it pushes to be around people like John and Dan, leadership-wise, being around people like Tony. It's made me a better leader and made our business stronger because of it. There's no question about it.
Jeff, reflecting on this time for ARA, I guess beyond the business and the boardrooms, but being a part of a community of like-minded people and the impact of connecting with members from across the nation and growing now an international rental network being here in Australia, you've built some deep friendships with Steve Mao, Beth in Colorado, John Bibbo, the Irwins in Michigan, and obviously, as we mentioned, Tony Conant and the team at ARA in Moline. Learning from peers, enriching your life both personally and professionally. I guess I also had a bit of insight from Beth as well, the second ever female ARA president and second generation owner of Aspen Rental in Colorado. Shared some travel stories, unforgettable moments with yourself and the ARA crew over the years. Beth said that my favourite memory of Jeff was on a leadership conference in Chicago many years ago. Some of us were staying at a different hotel than the session had been held, so we decided to walk back to the other hotel. It was a very cold Chicago night. About halfway through, Jeff started telling us that he thought his ears were going to fall off, and how in the world did we pull off to walk in these temperatures. We all started laughing, and he kept feeling more and more miserable as the days went on, and questioned why he thought he would want to walk so many of us in the cold areas instead of taking the simple shuttle.
Yep.
Jeff, firstly, what's the go-to karaoke song on a committee retreat? And I'm sure for those listening in who haven't volunteered in the ARA or contemplating joining these committees, what would you say to them on the doors that it's open for you?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, like I said before, say yes. Don't doubt yourself. I think back when I was on the ARA of Florida and Peggy asked me to be vice president, which the vice president of ARA of Florida has very little responsibility. I mean, basically in charge of membership, and you run the meeting if the president isn't there, but otherwise there's no responsibility. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. I could never do that. And I said yes and did it. It was just fine. Everything was great. And obviously that led to, where I am today. So I think, don't doubt yourself. You're just as capable as anybody else. So say yes and do it. Your life will be better. I'm sure you've heard this from other leaders on your podcast. every time I come to an ARA event, I get more out of it than I put in. It doesn't matter what the event is. It doesn't matter, even here, right? I will get more out of this trip and the higher show than I put into it. No question. Just the way it is, every interaction. And as far as the karaoke song, it is Ice Ice Baby by Vanilla Ice. That is my go-to karaoke song.
Very good. Jeff, as president, you've led some very pivotal decisions, and I asked Tony what it's like behind the scenes and some highlight key achievements during, I guess, your presidency that you've both collaborated on. And Tony said a few notable achievements that Jeff has led include driving the revised state approval process for approving new board directors and leading the ARA's headquarters relocation decision. Both of these decisions involved a lot of research and deliberation. Jeff's listened to feedback, made adjustments, and kept moving things forward as we work through these challenges. Beth also credited you on you explaining that Jeff's contributions to the association are many. He is passionate about rental and works hard to get people involved. They have a strong chapter in Florida, and his regional influence in finding strong volunteer leaders keeps making things go forwards. He has been a part of implementing many new programs and educations for members. Beth also mentioned that you've inspired so many people to get involved, cultivating a next generation of leaders in Florida, that your strong influence has really enhanced the recruitment, elevation, I guess, recognition and nurturing of volunteers within your region in the state. What are your, I guess, future aspirations or goals right now in finalizing your presidency?
Well, I mean, I think just continuing to stay involved, even after my term is over. There and support. Another thing I think is supporting the next generation. The decisions they make and all those things. I mean, I know that every decision we make is not popular, but everybody doesn't have all the information we had when we did it. Things like the relocation; those are difficult decisions. They rub people the wrong way, but I think it was the right thing for the association at this time. So it'll be fun to watch that, unfold over the coming years. And just, like I said, just watching where it goes. The future is bright for rental. It's not without challenges for the association, I'm sure, but it will be. It's in good hands. It's in good hands in the coming years with the leaders that have been chosen, in the immediate future, and I'm sure that will be true in the decades to come.
So I guess reflecting on these amazing achievements and the vision you guys have with the future of the ARA, and in rental, we are very fortunate to be a part of such a close-knit and strongly rooted global industry community. And this network it's kind of like constellation building. For each personal connection, like a star in a constellation, it kind of links to future opportunities, and that even when you're faced with setbacks, you can leverage these relationships to help you with breakthroughs. And I guess using that analogy of a constellation network, it really does transform these communities into co-creators of opportunity for all. So Jeff, over the years and the initiatives and countless hours that you've given, what's a moment or an accomplishment that really stands out for you with the ARA?
Well, I think the relationships, it's funny. I talked to Steve about this. Steve Mao and I have gotten to be great friends. He was the officiant in my wedding. He owns an equipment rental store in Brainerd, Minnesota. I own an event store in Jacksonville, Florida. We could not be further apart, you know what I mean? And our paths would never cross in 100 years, if not for this association. I'm sitting across the table from you, who's from, Australia. Our paths would never cross, right? But now, friends, as we see each other in the future, that's the thing that's the most amazing part of this association is those friendships, whether that people in Florida, but then just the network of ARA. I mean, there's people in every state in the country that I'm friends with through ARA, and it's just a really, really cool. I had a member reach out this week about a product, asking my thoughts on it, in another state, just because she knew that I had it and wanted to get my thoughts on it, things like that. And those are things that it's value for her because she gets somebody that has the product and speak to it. But it's just an opportunity that you would never have if not for ARA and the relationships built in it.
Absolutely. Jeff, I guess looking at all about events today and a vision for tomorrow, you've been truly dedicated to evolving the business with talent and preparing a new, generation of skilled and a next generation for the next phase of your growth, to your involvement with the community and local leadership with the Chamber of Commerce, involvement in all about events being deeply rooted in the Jacksonville community, all contributing to this vision of the future of who All About Events is and the role that you play within the rental industry and local community. I guess what excites you most about where All About Events is heading in the next 3 to 5 years and your plans to continue this growth trajectory?
I mean, it's already exceeded what I ever thought it could be, and it's just now, like, how far can we go with it? How big can it get? How big do we want it to get? And again, it's the opportunity for those people that, came to us and have advanced in the company, and just seeing them continue to grow and have, they get married, have kids, all those kind of things are super cool. So it's really just, let's see how far we can go. It's way bigger than I ever thought it would be. It's way more complex than I ever thought it would be. So now it's just kind of a cool ride to be on.
So Jeff, in a similar mindset, I guess customer requirements in the event rental industry are evolving towards more personalized, flexible, and safety-focused experiences, maybe when they have tent legs, but a growing emphasis on meaningful connections and also sustainable practices within operations. I personally believe that we're seeing more in-person events retaining their value, and if not more than ever, but event organisers are having to adapt to include all of this digitization and hybrid formats to meet these evolving, I guess, customer requirements. So I'm going to ask you to put on your visionary thinking cap, and let's imagine it's year 2030, and what do you think that the events industry or event rental businesses will have to meet in the future years?
Well, I think the bar is continually going up, and I think some of that, Pinterest was where it started, but it's evolved from there to social media, because you see the way that, if a Kardashian gets married, people want to copy elements of that wedding because they can see every piece of it. So I think the bar is constantly raised. The elevated tenting, whether the Levo tents and things like that, the garden tent that people have, it's just all that stuff is just more and more elevated. And it makes, on the higher end of the market, it makes those companies that can do those things that much more valuable and that much more opportunity, for sure.
Definitely. Jeff, moving to some amazing career highlights, from Inc. 5000 recognition to Wedding Wire awards, and you've had a lot of milestones, whilst also balancing business and life with your now wife Sarah, kids, and your business and your role as ARA chair. You're still finding time to supporting events, community leadership, and mate, you mustn't sleep me reading this right now, but Beth also mentioned that I first met Jeff at a board meeting and was taken by his thoughts and funny responses to things that that would never be out of line. We spent a lot of time together once Jeff joined the executive team. I like his balanced mindset and calm demeanor in meetings, but then always a funny comment to make everyone laugh. Jeff is very calming and committed to people he works with and in his personal life as well. It is special seeing the love for him and his new wife Sarah have, and the wedding that they will have will continue to connect people in the rental industry. Jeff, something that I guess people always discuss is work-life balance, and sometimes it might seem like an unrealistic myth for people in the rental industry, or an impossible task at balancing, an all-hands-on-deck experience with a business whilst also factoring in personal relationships. So reflecting on all the years that been, how do you really approach this in your life, and what have you taken away from the journey?
I think I met Sarah at the right time. Early on, I worked all the time. I mean, I remember I used to work all day. I was the first one in, I was the last one out. I would go home. I washed the dishes in my own kitchen. I washed the linens in my laundry room. So I would go home and I would start a load of wash, and I would start a load of dishes, and I would literally work until 11 o'clock at night in my kitchen, and I would pack the stuff up and go back the next day and do it again. So I got to a place, I met her at the right time, where that I had already sort of balanced that a little bit myself. But it's been good. I mean, the business has been a place where it's able to support, work-life balance for me, and it's made everybody there better when I'm not there. I mean, it makes them make decisions and make mistakes and hopefully learn from them. And it's good because I'll say something, you do what you want to do, but this is my thoughts. And then they do whatever. And if I turn out to be right, it's like, I don't even have to say it. They already know that actually what he said is he knows what he's talking about. Because I've made all the mistakes before, all of them. So, but again, it's been good for me from a work-life balance perspective, having the team where they are, and it's been good for them. I mean, there's no question. But again, I think we met at the right time because I had definitely stopped working as much as I had, the first 8 years or 10 years.
So it took your side first from that personal development side to then factor in more people to come into the circle.
Yeah, exactly. And then we dated for, long distance for 2.5 years. She lived in Vegas and I lived in Florida. So there was a lot of back and forth. So I was gone a lot for that too. But again, I was at a point where I could, and the world has worked to us with, the ability to work remote. I mean, all our systems are online. So I mean, I can, even here in the hotel room, I've been working some. So, it allows you to work wherever you are for sure.
Jeff, from your perspective, what makes a truly unforgettable event from the rental company's point of view?
I think one that's a lot of work, a lot of planning, and comes together and is, everyone's happy. The photos are beautiful. That's, to me, is the ultimate success, is when, all the work, all the planning is worth it. Because you can see them, when those orders are coming together, we all work on the quotes or we work on whatever the case is. And it's a build up to then execute, and you only have one chance. And so to do that and everybody be happy, that's the ultimate. Even if the customer doesn't even say anything after the fact, like, everything was great, blah, blah, blah. Just knowing that everything was right is the ultimate success.
Jeff, I wanted to expand a bit on the concept of I wish I knew what I know now, and that hindsight allows us to, I guess, recognize that our failures and ways to improve can also be transformative, but also can turn into lifelong wisdom.
Yeah.
And promoting that, I guess, lessons of regret shouldn't always be painful, but maybe educational, and it's signs that we've grown. So setting that lens of legacy and maybe hindsight, looking back at that 10 by 10 storage unit in 2010, knowing what you know now, what would today's Jeff tell 2010 Jeff?
Well, the one piece of advice I give everybody starting out is buy nice or buy twice. Because I learned along the way, you buy the cheapest thing, you're going to be replacing it in 12 months or 18 months. So you're better off spending a little more money and buying something that's a little bit nicer, whether that's a type of chair, a tent, some kind of accessory. But that's the biggest thing. And then the other thing is customer service thing is, lose the battle to win the war, right? So eat crow with a customer, refund their money. Let's win. Let's lose here because we're ultimately trying to win. Because if they go give you a bad review, now you're trying to undo it, and it's just not. You would pay more to undo the bad review than what they're asking for. So just refund the money and move on. Admit you were wrong, even if you weren't wrong, and let's just move on. So those are the two biggest pieces of advice I had to learn the hard way, where I would get in a pissing match with a customer over something, and it's just not worth it. It's just better off just saying, I can think of a few examples early on where my mouth went one step too far, and I wish I would never have done it.
Jeff, what's one thing that you wish more people knew about the event rental industry?
Well, I think the size of the industry and the ability to have a career in the industry. I mean, it's a career if that's what you want to make it. Even on the installer side. I mean, there are installers that make $100,000. I mean, that's a career. That's not just a job, flipping burgers. And I think I wish more people understood that. ARA is making steps with the foundations of safe tenting and some of those training courses to try to make. Ultimately, it would be great if we could make the installer a trade, but all the steps in that way will help. But that's the biggest thing, is just knowing this is a real career. It's not just a job, working in a warehouse or installing tents. It's a career if you choose to make it one.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Jeff, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I'm so glad that we could catch up so soon. Congratulations once again to yourself and Sarah. Enjoy Australia, New Zealand, and I guess, enjoy the show, and all of the members, I'm sure, will be very hospitable and be very over the moon to see you guys here, as we all are when any of the ARA team come over. So, Jeff, thank you for your time. Enjoy Australia, and thank you for coming on the Rental Journal.
Thanks for having me, Michael. I appreciate it.